Welcome back, folks. It is the Dynasty Nerds. It is the Bettor Sports Network. I am your host, Garrett Price at Dynasty Price on Twitter. And man, it's a good week. It's a good week. First of all, first and foremost, March 2nd is my daughter Amelia's birthday. That's right. My daughter Amelia, 8 years old today. So want to wish my daughter a very, very happy birthday. Had a fun day getting to celebrate her. I got some fun stuff planned for this weekend, party, all that kind of stuff. So, very excited about that. But a lot of other things to be excited about. Now, this is also the week of the NFL Combine, which kind of is the unofficial. Well, you know what? I would say this. I would say the Senior Bowl is kind of the unofficial kickoff of the Dynasty off season. But this is a big piece of it. This is a big portion of it. And there's a lot of stuff going on down there. In fact, we're going to have Tristan Cook, one of our really, really knowledgeable college guys. He's going to be coming on. We've had him on before. He's going to come on tonight, talk a little bit about the combine, some things that we should be looking out for, some things that we should be expecting, some potential surprises. Peter's guessing that I am getting a haircut next week. Probably it is getting a tiny bit long, maybe a little bit. So might need to. I might push it out 2 weeks. I might push it out 2 weeks. We'll have to wait and see there. But yes, so he's coming on. He's going to be talking about this NFL combine. And I actually had the pleasure of going to the combine 2 years ago. Now, schedule wise, days off, things like that, it just hasn't worked the past couple of years to be able to go. Thinking maybe next year. We'll see. But maybe next year. But my experience there was awesome. Like legitimately top 10 week for me. Like I had so much fun there getting to talk to the prospects. That was first time I got to talk to my boy DJ Dallas. Got a chance to just watch the different events, the bench press, talk to some of the players. I remember sitting down next to Damon Arnett, who's no longer with the team. Jeff Okuda, talking with those guys, just like while they were watching teammates doing the bench press and stuff like that. So yeah, I had a lot of fun. It's an awesome time, awesome place to be for sure. So, but there's a lot of news and notes that come out of the combine, not just the measurables, not just the 40 times and the bench press reps and all of those things, but there's also a lot of information about how guys interview, what some of these teams are thinking, maybe some potential moves that could happen. We know nothing can be official yet until the beginning of the league year, which I believe free agency in the new league year is the 15th of March, I want to say. So we got about 2 weeks until that is official as well. So all things coming together. So Tristan and I will be breaking down a lot of that. Also in a second here, mock draft that I want to talk about because I think we're getting into peak mock draft season. We're starting to see things settle out a little bit. The combine is going to help that settle out even more. Do that. Then I'm going to talk with my main man, Dennis Bennett, around 10:15. He's going to come on, and we're going to talk a little bit about the ADP that we've currently gotten, the rookie ADP from some of our nerds drafts, how that has kind of played out, and discuss those things. And then also, if we have time, which you know how Dennis and I can be, we can kind of get on a topic and just, talk for a while on different things. But we also kind of want to talk about players that you might want to watch out for if they are on your fantasy roster, because there is a chance that within the next few months here between free agency and the rookie draft that they might not have a job anymore. So if we have time, we will get into some of that as well. Peter's asking if he should send a trade offer to Dennis while he's on. Always when in doubt, send trade offers. Peter, are we in any leagues together? I don't know that we are. I was going to say, send me a trade offer. But I don't know that we're in any leagues together. We just did a dynasty, or not a dynasty, a redraft best ball league. That is something that I am newer to, which sounds weird because I do so much dynasty. I've done dynasty best ball, but I've actually never done a regular redraft best ball league. Did my first one this week with the great Rich Dotson over there on Discord. We did it on the Underdog app. And by the way, if you're out there, go to Underdog right now. Put in promo code NERDS, right? If you do that, not only will you get a deposit match up to $100. So you put in $10, they give you $10. You put in 50, they give you 50, et cetera, all the way up to $100. But you will also be getting a free year of Dynasty Nerds. That's talking the Nerd Score, the film room, all of that kind of stuff. So feel free, hop in there, do that. Even if you're an existing customer, we're coming up with ways for existing customers of the Nerd Herd to get something, a little something from that too. And Josh, yeah, because we talked about a Dynasty League here, a BSN Dynasty League from everyone that listens to the show. And Dynasty Leagues are tough, but the underdog drafts, there's not a lot of commitment, which is kind of nice. So maybe I would consider doing that. Maybe doing a BSN best ball draft with all the lovely folks here that hang out, talk, chat, etc. So only got about 10 minutes here, but I wanted to get into some interesting things that I saw in this most recent draft here. So this is a mock from CBS, and we start to see a lot of these come out right around combine time because there's more information circulating, different things like that. They have the Colts trading up to number 1 overall and selecting Bryce Young. Now, I have a hard time believing that they're going to do that. The Colts seem like the team to me that would potentially just sit pat at 4 and take the best quarterback that falls to them. So, yeah. Sedated Fork says, I have Dynasty too much today. At a punk rock bar drinking a hazy, Garrett is getting drowned out by the punk music. Well, first of all, thank you for listening while you're there. I appreciate that, man. But the punk rock music, who's playing? Is it like a local band? Is it somebody that I would know? Let me know. Let me know who is out there right now. So that being said, I just mentioned Bryce Young. They take him first off the board. I don't see that happening. I think they would sit back and wait and see if either Stroud or Levis falls to them at 4. But then, obviously, that pushes up a quarterback to the 2 spot, CJ Stroud. So CJ Stroud is now going to it's all radio cranked up. More of a Barry Manilow guy. Love it. So CJ Stroud would go then in this case to the Houston Texans, which would be interesting because we've kind of been mocking Bryce Young as the guy that's going to go there this entire time. But in this situation, that would change things a little bit. One of the things that we said could potentially be good is he would get to team up with an old teammate of his, John Mechie, who, obviously terrible stuff with the cancer and whatnot, that he wasn't able to play last year. So that would have been a nice little team up there. This doesn't happen in this case. Pick 3, Jalen Carter. There's a lot of rumors about him, a lot of rumblings about him, the off the field issues, the arrest, supposedly misdemeanors. But we'll see. Will that knock him down on any boards, or is he just such a dominant defensive tackle that it truly doesn't matter? So Jalen Carter off the board at 3 to the Arizona Cardinals. Then Will Anderson to the Chicago Bears, hopefully getting a pass rush again that they haven't really had. I know they had Khalil Mack there for a little while, but he wasn't quite as dominant as he was with his time with the Raiders. So we'll see. Other ones that are interesting for fantasy then after these top 4 guys here. At pick 6, Will Levis to the Carolina Panthers. So he falls to 6. And then at 7, Anthony Richardson off the board. So 4 quarterbacks in the first 7 picks. And there is a lot of rumblings. I was just seeing stuff from Peter Schrager about how he's interviewed really well. Obviously, we've talked on here before about his rushing upside, about his cannon of an arm, but also the risk that comes with him. He's a raw prospect. So he would be coming off the board pretty early. Will Levis to the Carolina Panthers at 6 right before him. Then we don't see any other offensive players, or offensive skill position players, I should say, until we get down to pick 12, Quentin Johnston. Dynasty Rich now saying the biggest question is where do Charbonnet and Dalton Kincaid land? Two of my faves. And Rich, you might have seen, we do these teaser graphics, do these little teasers. And we did Zach Charbonnet today. Came in with a 74.41 or 14. My dyslexia is coming out. So he came out today. That would put him in the top 12 if we combine the four classes from the past from the past 4 years. So pretty nice. Sedata Fork asking, which quarterback do you want Indy to take? I would like them to take CJ Stroud. They're a team that has been dying for a quarterback ever since Andrew Luck retired. And I don't think they can take risks. And I do believe Bryce Young has a higher ceiling. I do believe that he's a little bit better of a passer overall. But that size is scary. And I think the Colts organization needs to win there. And so I would rather them get CJ Stroud. I think he would be a good fit with the Indianapolis Colts, with their environment. Just a good guy, steady athlete. You know, he's neither him nor Bryce Young is going to be incredible in the 40-yard dash or be this, Anthony Richardson type athlete. But I really do believe that would be the best pick for them. Peter also saying Young if possible, but Stroud would be great too. Tristan Cook, who's going to be on here in about 4 minutes. Give me all the Kincaid shares. Also, it has him going above Mayer. That is something that I've heard a little bit here. And you're right. This most recent CBS draft, Dalton Kincaid going at pick 15. Michael Mayer then drops to pick 18. So very, very interesting. Peter saying that I've seen mocks with Kincaid going at 11 overall. 11 overall would be very high. And that would be for the Tennessee Titans. I'd be surprised if he went to the Titans. I think Chig did enough last year, and I think there's enough holes on that team that they would be looking to plug other issues rather than the tight end position. So I would be surprised if he went that early. But, I mean, the Texans could use one. The Jets, even though they signed a couple guys, they're older players, they could use one. There's a lot of teams that could use one. So we shall see where he goes off the board. A couple other interesting names of note. Jordan Addison at pick 20 to the Seattle Seahawks. So a little bit of that, replacing Tyler Lockett, both, smaller, fast, speedy guys. I wouldn't hate that at all. Then this mock draft here has Bijan Robinson falling all the way to pick 30. That's right, all the way to pick 30. Now, I would be very surprised if that happens. By the way, it's to the Philadelphia Eagles. And I think the Eagles would be peeing their pants with excitement if he fell that far. I really don't think he's going to. I think he comes off the board somewhere between 12 and 20. I really do. I don't think he's going to fall that far. But Rich, I'm with you. I don't think they would take Bijan Robinson in that range. I don't think they're going to trade up to do that. I think if he fell, I think he's so talented that they would do it. But I think they like Kenneth Gainwell quite a bit. And I think that there's other running backs in this draft that they could pair with Kenneth Gainwell that would be a good duo, a Tank Bigsby type of guy, a Zach Evans type of guy. I think those types of players in the third round would probably be very good fits for their team. Kenneth Gainwell can do a lot of the heavy lifting early. And then, like we've seen a lot of teams do with these rookie running backs, we could see them slowly integrate him. Charbonnet would be a great fit. Then they would have to probably take him in the second. Would they do that? Maybe, maybe not. But we'll have to see. Then the last player in this mock draft off the board is at pick 31, Jalen Hyatt, absolute speedster out of the University of Tennessee. He was a really interesting prospect because wasn't somebody that was talked about a lot up until this point. Up until this season. Tennessee, not a hotbed right now for college football talent. Hooker came there the season before, put up a good season, not a great season, but a good season. Then we had the start of his career. I mean, his first whatever it was, 6, 7, 8 games, whatever it was absolutely unreal. He was fantastic. And his main beneficiary was Jalen Hyatt. And what capped it off, and we're going to get Tristan here to talk about it in just a second with me, but what capped it off was that 5-touchdown game against the Alabama Crimson Tide. You put up 5 touchdowns at any position. I mean, for a quarterback, that's fantastic. But at wide receiver, absolutely unreal. Tristan, my man,
How's it
he is
going?
at the Tristan Cook on Twitter. Did I get that right?
You did.
Nice. All right.
The
1 for 1.
the just at Tristan Cook hasn't tweeted in about 11 years, but
11 years. I can't even believe Twitter's been around that long.
Yeah. Back in the day, you know.
Man, that makes me feel old. Makes me feel really old. All right, so I have lots of questions for you tonight, Tristan. And last time Tristan was on, we did get to see his incredible ability to be able to name random players from random colleges. If we have time, I might take another stab or two. We'll have to see how much time we have in the show. But let's talk about some of these prospects. And I think the biggest one to talk about with the combine is Anthony Richardson. We've heard a lot of good things already about his interviews and how things have been going there. As a prospect, how do you feel about Anthony Richardson, and what are your expectations for him once he starts doing these drills? Are teams just going to fall in love?
At least one team will. I think there's some teams that are pretty much going to just be off of him regardless of how good he looks. I expect him to come tear it up on the field. Yeah. And have a lot of people. I'm not really sure. Like I've struggled with comps for him. I think Cam Newton's probably going to be the one favorite, yeah, based off of the testing numbers. But yeah, I mean, I think he's going to tear it up. He's going to look ridiculous, and some team's going to fall in love with him. I saw a mock. I know you were talking about the CBS mock. I saw one. Yeah. That had him going 1 overall to the Colts. So I know a couple weeks ago, the odds for those who track those things for him to go 1st overall was went way down. Like it was getting way more likely. So
I saw that it was like plus 2,000 and it dropped to like plus 700.
Yeah, that was I think what I saw too. But it wouldn't shock me. I mean, if he comes out and runs 4.5 something, he could run faster than that, and he's got the arm. The biggest thing is consistency, and if you can teach him consistency, it's one thing to say you got to improve your consistency. It's another thing to actually be able to improve it, whether it's mechanical or what. That's left to be seen. But yeah, I expect him to probably get drafted in like the top 5 or so picks.
So you don't think he gets outside the top 5?
I don't. I mean, Seattle picks at 5. I think they might pick him. They might trade out. They love to trade down. Right. It wouldn't shock me either way. The Cardinals could trade out. The Bears could trade out. There's so many trade out spots. I think we're probably going to see another year where we have, maybe 3 or 4 quarterbacks go in the top like 7 or 10 picks.
No, I could see that. And you mentioned, the mock that had him going to the Colts. As much as that scares me for a Colts organization that has just lacked stability, and then you get somebody that is, I mean, don't get me wrong, upside is crazy, but the floor is incredibly low. Yeah. The ceiling is, as high as you can possibly get, but the floor is very low as well. That does scare me. But the one thing that is interesting, they do have the old offensive coordinator for the Eagles as their new offensive coordinator. And obviously he did fantastic stuff with Jalen Hurts. Obviously another mobile quarterback that needs to learn a little bit of discipline. And that's basically what we've been saying for a lot of these quarterbacks that have come out a little bit raw, a little bit more gunslingers. Guys like, we mentioned Jalen Hurts, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, like dual threat guys. that lack a little consistency in their throwing game, but have just really good arms and can make plays. I mean, Anthony Richardson falls into that, and he has a coach that has been known to develop that kind of player. So as much as that scares me for them, the risk there, maybe they are set up for something like that.
Yeah, it wouldn't shock me. I mean, I would love it for Jonathan Taylor shares. Usually mobile quarterbacks make running backs production go up. Yeah, I think that like there's far worse landing spots for Richardson to go than the Colts. It would be wild to see them trade up to 1 to get him, but it also, if he hits, he's going to be the best player in the draft, I would imagine. So,
Yeah.
it wouldn't shock me to see it, but it would be, I don't think they would have to trade up to 1 unless he just absolutely like destroys the combine.
Which he very well could. Rich said Seattle. That was actually who I was mocking him to for a while, but with the 20th pick, not with the 5th
Yeah.
pick. But obviously, he just continues to rise and rise and rise and rise. So we will see how all of that plays out. Now let's get to some of the fun stuff. Okay,
Yeah.
who do you think? Now we're going to remove defensive backs, and because for fantasy we don't care about that kind of stuff. Of the skill position players on the offensive side of the football, who's going to have the best 40 time?
That's a great question. I think it's the easy answer to give is Jalen Hyatt. I think
Okay.
he's probably the favorite to run the fastest time. I think there's probably a couple of guys that could maybe challenge him, but I don't know that I would bet on anybody else. Like, I think he's shown that on the field, at least, that he's got that top end speed that no one else really does. And yeah, if I'm betting on somebody, I'm betting on him.
I think he's a good bet, but there's another guy that is legitimately a track star in Devin A-Chain.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
if there's somebody that I think could rival him, which I really think Devin A-Chain could, and somebody was talking about it the other day, and I didn't realize this. Now, this was in the 200 meter, not 100 meter, which would be closer to a 40-yard dash. But in the 200 meter, his best time this year would have placed him 5th at the last Olympics.
Yeah.
So pretty crazy.
I think it's going to depend a lot for him on if he decided to put on weight to show that he's a bulkier, maybe more sustainable back, because that seems to be the thing that happens more often, I think, with running backs than wide receivers is, some of those smaller statured guys that have question marks about if they can hold up. They end up, whether it's water weight or dirty weight or whatever you want to call it, they add some weight to try to make their number look a little higher, and then it impacts their speed. I remember, I think it was Ronald Jones was the one that ran super slow and hurt himself because he weighed way more than people thought he was going to coming in, as a good thing. He put on weight, and then it hurt his speed. So A-Chain wouldn't shock me either. He's super fast.
Yeah, no, I could absolutely see that. There's a couple other running backs that I think are going to put up really good times as well. Jahmyr Gibbs is one of the guys that comes to mind that I think we will see him in the 4.3s, somewhere in the 4.3s. We'll see exactly where he ends up and all of that. But we also see guys every single year that just tank their stock. Just absolutely tank their stock. One of the guys, and I think it was a little bit unfair, but one of the ones that comes to mind the most was just last year, Kyron Williams, talked about as one of the top 4 or 5 backs in the class, and then just ran a terrible 40 time. And it was better once they adjusted it because it was wrong live. That's why they always call it unofficial time.
It was 4.66 live, I think, and got adjusted down to 4.59, if I'm remembering right.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Something like that. But
yeah.
Who are you worried about this year that could absolutely tank their stock?
Well, Tank Bigsby. I love
Play
Tank Bigsby. And I think he's either going to test great or test terribly. And I don't really know which way it's going to go. It's kind of like a toss-up at this point. I'm just excited to finally get to see.
Yeah.
I've been a huge Tank Bigsby fan. I had him like pushing for the running back 2 spot earlier in the year for me spot. But yeah, I think he would be one that I'm a little worried about. I think Sean Tucker is going to similarly either test insane or just run slow. And if he runs
Yeah.
slow,
He's an
like
interesting one
that
to me
worries me.
because my film evaluation of him was a lot worse than I wanted it to be. I wanted to really like him. When we did our too early Nerds mock draft, I took him as the third running back off the board. Like
Yeah,
I was in on Sean Tucker, and then sometimes you dig into the tape and you're like, wow, this is why we watch the tape. This is very different than I
yeah,
thought. But for a guy that is also part of the track team at Syracuse, I was surprised how many times that he got caught from behind, whether it's truly from behind or, guys getting the angle on him. But still, those elite speed guys, that angles don't matter. Angles don't matter for those guys. I saw him not breaking off as many of those crazy runs where he would get stopped 30, 40 yards down the field as opposed to completing it all the way for a touchdown. So he is one that I'm really curious to see what his actual time is, and is he better because he's a track guy, and so he understands the blocks, how to get off of them, so still posts a good time, or what? So I'm really curious to see what his time is.
yeah. I think it would like I think if he runs somewhere in the 4.5s, he'll be fine. I don't think like that would be for me at least like okay, you've got the speed. Maybe it doesn't quite translate on like with football pads on as well as we would hope because I'm with you. He's kind of been like underwhelming when I've watched him.
Mm-hmm.
I like Sean Tucker too, and I admittedly have only watched a couple of games of his, but I've seen a run or two of that where you're like, I kind of thought you were going to take that one. Like, I
Yeah.
don't watch a lot of Syracuse games live, so I don't really know what the outcome of the play is. And I see it and I'm like, oh, is this a touchdown? And it hasn't been. So yeah,
Yeah.
I would love it if he came out and shocked people with a fast 40 time because I do like him. But then you'd have the questions of why aren't you doing it in football pads?
Right. Absolutely. What players do they have some questions to answer? Let's put it that way. They have some questions to answer for you where you're like, I just don't have a good gauge on this guy. The combine will help clear some things up on me for whatever it is, whether it's character issues, whether it's how fast they're going to test, how strong they are, whatever it is. Is there anybody that you need some questions answered from them in this combine to determine what you're doing with them?
One of the main guys for me would be Kayshon Boutte. Like
Mm,
he's my wide receiver one. I've loved him. He's been the top for me all year, and I've seen him falling further and further down a lot of people's boards or their wide receiver rankings or mock drafts or not in the first round of a lot of mock drafts. So and there's all the off the field stuff, why he decided to declare super late and there's a lot of questions about
yeah.
around him. So he's one that I like. I'm not sure he'll end up as my top receiver by the end of with the testing numbers and digging in a little more to the film, and he might drop a few spots. Like I don't have a head and shoulders above anybody else receiver. They've all been really close,
Mm-hmm.
so it could make or break him for me. And then a little bit lower, a guy that I really like that I'm not sure how he'll actually test, and it might hurt his stock as well, is another receiver that also used to go to LSU, Trey Palmer.
Mm.
I'm a big Trey Palmer fan. I don't think he's going to run super fast. I think he's more like a Jarvis Landry
Sure.
type of, like if he can get in that role and get peppered targets, I think he could be really good. But I'm curious because
Tell me a little bit about him, because I've heard the name, but I've done most of my work on the running back so far, and I'm not super familiar with Trey Palmer. So tell me a little bit about him.
yeah, so he transferred to Nebraska before this last season from LSU. He followed, I think it was the quarterbacks coach that went to Nebraska. And he became their top target. And like, he's more of a physical, like, I think he's like 6'1", 200 roughly. I mean, a lot
Sure.
of receivers are roughly 6'1", 200, but he's not a like wow athleticism guy exactly.
Right.
He's more of your classic possession type of receiver, but I think he's big enough and physical enough that you get him in a role where he's not going to have a huge ADOT. He's not going to be a down the field kind of guy, but he's got enough speed, I think. We'll see about the 40 time, assuming he runs it. I think that he's going to be like a third round rookie pick at best. He might shock people and make it into the second round if he has a really good combine or something, but he's somebody that I have a lot in C2C leagues, and I'm hoping to get in a lot of dynasty leagues kind of as a value pick, that it's like, oh, who'd you take? All right, cool. Kind of guy, probably a day 3 NFL pick that I really like.
Love it. I'm excited to watch the tape on him. So there's been a lot made about this tight end class, and for good reason. I mean, we're talking 3 guys potentially that could be in or at least close to the first round. Todd McShay, or was it Daniel Jeremiah, I think it was, said that he could see as many as 9 tight ends going in the first 3 rounds. Like, lots of guys in this class. Who's your personal favorite right now?
As far as my top ranked tight end, it's still Michael Mayer, but it is about as close as you can with Kincaid. I think at the relative cost right now, not that many rookie drafts are happening right now, but C2C leagues, or assuming, that maybe if Mayer gets drafted after him, that might change things. But I think that Kincaid has moved way up. But one of my favorite slightly lower guys is Sam Laporta from Iowa.
Yeah.
They just produce tight ends year in and year out. They don't really produce quarterbacks if you're an Iowa fan, but they produce tight ends, and he's been really good for them. I think he's kind of going to be a little sneaky athletic. I wouldn't be surprised to see his draft stock shoot up quite a bit after the combine. I don't know what he's going to run, but if I assume he'll test well, and he's looked good in the bits and pieces of either games or a little bit of tape that I've watched on him.
Yeah, Sam Laporta is an interesting name. I'm glad you brought him up. I always remember him. This is really dumb. Remember him, but back in the day, I believe it was the CC Sabathia trade from the Cleveland Indians, where they got this big name prospect named Matt Laporta. And everybody was so excited about Matt Laporta. Problem was he could not hit a curveball. Just couldn't do it. And so he basically never left AAA outside of a few short stints here and there. So because of that, in my head, every time I see him, I think of Matt Laporta, which is curious as to why I like him, because Matt Laporta really let me down. But I really like Sam Laporta for whatever reason. So always remember that there. Okay, so I asked you earlier on, is there one guy that you're worried about that they have to prove something to you here? On the converse side, is there somebody here that you're like, this guy is going to absolutely crush? Like, people are going to walk away from the combine loving this guy. Like, I remember for me, coming into the Senior Bowl, it was Tyjae Spears. Like, I was like, oh, he's going to be so good. And then I was kind of sad when everybody did love him after that, because I was like, well, now I can't get him cheap anymore. So that actually sucks. But is there somebody that you think people are just going to walk away from the NFL combine like, he's going to move up everybody's board, people are going to love him? Like, who do you think that guy could be?
I think I've got a couple. I would say staying on the tight ends, I think Darnell Washington, similarly to Anthony Richardson, he is just freak athletic. I know that week 1 Oregon game, the highlight of him hurdling, I think it was actually maybe Christian Gonzalez, who's supposed to be a top 5 or 10 pick from Oregon, former Buff. So one of the good ones got away, but yeah, he's 6'7", 260, I think. And and is insanely athletic. He's not one of those like, hey, you're just really big and you can even have a role in the NFL. He's really big and really athletic.
Right.
So I think he might walk away. Obviously, Anthony Richardson is one that's just gonna, I think, look really, really good, and people are gonna love him. Yeah, I think Quentin Johnston might do it if he,
A good name. Yep.
if he can show up and either run a good or better 40 time. He's a little inconsistent in the film this year. He struggled at the beginning of the year, but he's probably like the most physically gifted of the receivers in the class.
Probably so, and he's one of the few of the bigger name guys that has legitimate size too. We're looking at a
Yeah.
lot of smaller receivers, or guys right around that 6 foot mark. But he's one of the few that has legitimate size with him.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he's like 6'2", 6'3", some like 215 in there.
Yeah.
Definitely a guy that can go up and get the ball, but if he can run fast too, those size speed guys always seem to shoot up after the combine.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think all those guys are good names to be looking for. A guy that I'm really curious to see how everything shakes out with him is Zach Charbonnet. Zach Charbonnet is somebody that I'm kind of surprised he's kind of become the consensus RB3, which I didn't think we were going to get a consensus RB3. I thought it was going to be the top two guys and Bijan and Gibbs there, and then it was going to kind of be like a pick your poison kind of thing after that. But basically everywhere, and for the moment, probably myself included, is saying Zach Charbonnet is RB3, which scares me a little bit because I don't think he's quite good enough to be the consensus RB3, but I do really like him. So it's really curious, but a big guy. We saw some flashes of speed, but UCLA also had a very good offensive line this year. A lot of big holes and opportunities in that Chip Kelly system. What are your thoughts on Charbonnet?
So I'm actually a little lower on him than a lot of people. So I think that might be like good to get both your perspective as somebody that really likes him and mine that's a little lower.
Yeah.
I think that if he runs fast, like, he doesn't have to blaze like, sub 4.4 or sub.
No, but even like a 4.52 or something like that.
Yeah,
his size
if
would be
he's
fine.
like low 4.5s or anything better than that, I think I'm going to end up eventually bumping him up. I'm a little worried about his speed. I don't know that he has it. He's shown that he can catch the ball. I know you're a big fan of like pass fail on catching, and he's definitely a pass.
Yep.
He runs a little bit high. So that's probably the biggest knock on him as a rusher, but he's big. He's like 6'2", 220, I think, something like that. So
at least 220.
He might even be 230 or more. We'll see when the measurements come in. But
I'm curious.
But yeah, I think that like if he can show some speed at that size and maybe get his pad level down a little bit, like there's only a few guys in the NFL that have run with high pad level successfully for like any long period of time, most notably Adrian Peterson. I don't think he's there. Yeah. But I mean, it's not to say he couldn't be good or that he can't be coached to get it down a little. And so I think, similarly to what we were talking about with Sean Tucker, if he can show that NFL speed, I think he's going to bump up because he's kind of fluctuated on my rankings. I have had Bijan obviously one. And then for me, the second running back has been pretty like up and down. Gibbs is now solidly in that spot, but Charbonnet was, like in the discussion going into the year. Tank Bigsby was another one. Zach Evans. That was the one I was forgetting. Those guys were all kind of like fighting for that spot. I think it's pretty clearly Gibbs for me. But now the rest of them are fighting for that third spot. So I don't think RB3 is wild for Charbonnet by any stretch, but I also wouldn't be shocked if he runs a little slow, if he ends up being like the 6th or 7th running back drafted.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting because I feel like this is a class where there's two guys that are, at least talent-wise, deserving of first-round picks. And then I'm not convinced that any of the rest of them are even second round picks. But I'm also not convinced that they're like fourth round picks either. Like I feel like we have deservedly 7, 8 running backs that deserve to go in the third round that are
Yeah.
very talented running backs that could even be the lead back for their team. But they all have like a wart or two that just makes me question a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's a really fair assessment. I think we're like, there's not a lot, like you said, Bijan and Gibbs are the two that deserve to be picked early. But I think then you have a huge chunk of guys that could go anywhere, like around pick 50 through, pick 100. But there's too many running backs to actually go in there, like probably. So you're
Right.
probably gonna have a couple guys that go a little early, and then some guys that fall into day 3. And then there'll be one or two that like they picked who, or like I can't believe he's still on the board type of guys.
Tyrion Davis Price just went in the third.
Right. He was like the third best running back on his team. So
yeah, that one was wild to me last year.
Yeah. Yeah. There's always one or two of those that you're just like, all right. Like,
guess you stick with your board.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one was pretty interesting. All right, any other notes on the combine, players in this class, a name that we haven't discussed, or anything like that you want to let the fine folks here know about before we get you out of here?
Yeah, I've got a few running backs that I am excited to see where they go. One is Deuce Vaughn. The tiny little running back. I mean, he's probably like weighs as much as me, but he's not very tall.
Right.
He's really strong. He's like 5'6", I think like 185, something like.
Yeah.
He's a like thick dude for that size. He's going to get all the Darren Sproles comps in the world.
They even went to the same school.
Yep.
I mean,
I'm excited to see him both at the combine and just like where he ends up going. If he goes to a unique or like exciting situation, he might be someone that would surprise people in his value in dynasty leagues.
Yeah.
The other two running backs that I personally like a lot that I'm not sure how they will test or how the NFL is going to view them. Eric Gray from Oklahoma, formerly from Tennessee. And Kendre Miller, TCU's running back.
Yeah.
He's kind of like somehow not really been talked about a ton, I don't think, leading up to this, despite how good TCU was this year.
But he's got good size too, man.
Yeah, he's definitely a bigger back, like both in weight and height, and runs well. And like, I'm excited. I haven't watched anything other than the games live on him. But I'm excited to watch his tape and see just, if what I saw live, on Saturdays actually was that good, or if I, hyping him up more than he should have been. But those are probably my three, like the three guys that I think people should pay more attention to than they have.
Absolutely. I love it. All right. Tell the fine folks where they can find you, and anything you want to plug real quick, anything you've been writing or working on or anything like that.
Yeah. On Twitter at the Tristan Cook. That's where you can find me, probably the easiest. I will be coming out with my post combine positional rankings. I'm not sure if it'll be one article, multiple articles, but they will be posted on Twitter, and I'll probably do like a positional article about each spot and just kind of maybe winners and losers from the combine. But yeah.
Awesome, man. Well, thanks again for coming on. Appreciate having you. And you're always welcome. So I'm sure we'll have you on again sometime soon. Maybe even closer to the draft. Break some of that down.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. Take care.
All right, we'll see you, buddy. All right. Well, let's take a quick break. And when we get back, got a few more topics we want to discuss before we get our own Dennis Bennett on the show to talk a little ADP. Love talking ADP. It's good to know it, and we'll help you for your rookie draft. So we'll do that in just a moment here on the Bettor Sports Network.
talk about your picks and your fantasy teams on Bettor Sports Network.
The importance of checking out the site that you're playing on. Default rankings of these sites. A lot of times they don't get updated. I know from experience. I used to write default rankings for the NFBKC, the basketball version of the NFBC. I'd write these default rankings in June for the NBA, before the NBA draft, before free agency opened up. And guess what? I was never asked to write an update article or update the default rankings. This happens a lot. Maybe if there's something obvious, it gets updated. Aaron Judge, for some reason, hurts his back. Maybe they make that change. Just maybe. But you don't know that. And that's why it's just so important that you show up to your draft room or you do that pre-draft prep. We're all busy. We know we're about to devote a lot of time to our fantasy baseball drafts. Why not spend the extra 20 to 25 minutes to invest properly in your team, to go and see which of those players are way down default rankings? They're going to be different on all of these sites, and you're going to be looking at them and going, maybe their analysts think a certain player who shouldn't be in the top 100, who should be maybe even not even the top 200, will be in that top 100. You got to check that out. You got to know where you're playing, just like you got to know your format when you sign up for the league. It's just so crucial, and people just skip right over it. You think it's cool to show up to the draft room 3 minutes before the draft. Well, number one, it's not cool because the commissioner's trying to make sure it's organized, especially me, who runs auctions. You can't, it's one thing if someone doesn't show up for the snake draft, oh well, doesn't ruin it for everyone. Auctions, you can't have someone not show up. Auto bidding, auto auctioning, it ruins the sanctity of those drafts here, which is why I always recommend, hey, make it easy on your commissioner. Don't make them send those texts there. It's annoying. You shouldn't have to do that. Don't wait till the last minute and get in there about 20, 25 minutes before so you can just look up and down the entire default rankings list so you can make a queue out of that, Ron. And the reason I keep saying this is because people still show up 2, 3 minutes before the draft, and that's it. In fact, in one of my auctions, people were asking me where certain players were, and I go, did you search their name? No, I just got in. Well, that's no excuse right there. That's your own fault. I mean, you're organized, so you're a hard person to ask here.
You're getting those questions. This is your preschool league, right? People don't know how to search player names.
People freak out. They don't think. That's the problem. Because they show up 2 minutes before the draft. That's why.
The Playbook with Fensty and Ronis, presented by FantasyAlarm.com. Weekdays at 5 Eastern on Bettor Sports Network.
All right, we are back from break. Awesome conversation with the Tristan Cook. And we just heard Fensty and Ronis talking a little fantasy baseball. That's right, fantasy baseball. And you know what? I love fantasy baseball. I still play fantasy baseball every year. I only do one league. I used to do a lot more before I spent so much time with Dynasty Nerds and getting ready for drafts and all of that kind of stuff. But don't get me wrong. I love fantasy baseball. I buy MLB The Show every single year. That is my go-to video game. I'm not that good at Call of Duty. Ask Peter, ask Jared, ask anybody that's played with me. I'm not that good at it. I enjoy it. But my game, if I want to win, if I want to get some W's, it's MLB The Show. And you know what? If you're like me and you like a little baseball in your life, maybe you like football more, but you like a little fantasy baseball in your life, here's what you need to do. You need to view the Bettor Baseball Preview. That's right. We're getting you ready for the upcoming baseball season with the Bettor Baseball Preview. From fantasy baseball to MLB betting, the newest baseball cards from 2023, you can get access to our exclusive content for free right now at bettorsports.com, featuring some of the best baseball minds in the industry like Adam Ronis, Ray Flowers, Kyle Efrink, and Cody Decker. Get player profiles, prop bets, futures, sleepers and busts, fantasy draft, and more at no cost. Please register with your name and email at bettorsports.com right now and get instant access plus notifications when new features are released. Go to bettorsports.com and sign up for the Better Baseball Preview. I should probably stop the show and go sign up for that because I want to get all of those tips, all of those tricks. I want to dominate my fantasy baseball leagues this year. I want to cheer the Guardians to another fantastic season, playoff run. And and I want to dominate on some MLB of the show. I don't know that they'll help me with that, but I just like doing that. So for what it's worth. And even better yet, right now in the app, you could click on the message in the app that says get access to the Bettor Sports Baseball Preview to go straight to the bettorsports.com website and register. So Sean, the man behind the glass, not really behind the glass because this isn't like a real studio. We're just remote, but you get the point. Sean made it even easier for you. Just click the link in the chat there and we can get all of this moving. So part of this whole combine stuff, all of these things that we're talking about, one of the things that, I try to stick on the fantasy baseball now I'm talking baseball, the fantasy football aspect and the fantasy players. But we had a really interesting development this week. Jalen Carter. Now, if you are like me and you are more of a fantasy sports person, more so than an actual NFL person, then you might not know a ton about him just other than hearing his name. But he is a dominant defensive tackle. And, and Michael Anthony, he said late to the party, what did I miss? You missed Tristan Cook on the show. Awesome recap of some of the things going down at the combine, some of the guys he likes, who he thinks will impress, who he thinks will disappoint, different things like that. We will be talking fantasy ADP here in just a little bit with our own Dennis Bennett. And if we have time, which we're not sure we will, but if we have time, players that we might want to get off our fantasy rosters before the rookie drafts, the NFL draft, and before NFL free agency, because we are afraid they might lose their job. But Jalen Carter, fantastic defensive tackle, was basically locked and loaded as a top 5 pick. There were some that thought if the Chicago Bears stay at 1, they might even be able to, they might just take him at 1 overall. Will Anderson was another person that they thought they might take, but I mean, he's in that conversation. He is an elite player. Well, he was wanted and he was arrested. He spent less than 24 hours in jail, but involved in potentially racing with the unfortunate student athlete and I believe one of the team managers that died a few months back. He was believed to have been involved in that, potentially racing against them, and that could have been what caused that. So it's going to be interesting to see how NFL evaluators take that into consideration, because what they do on the field is obviously a huge, huge part of the equation, the biggest part of the equation. But there is certain things that will get you to the point where he's off your board completely, because you just don't want that type of person, that type of player, that type of distraction. And look, he could be a fantastic human being. I truly don't know. So I don't want to besmirch his name at all. But there are some things that get called into question when you were involved in potentially aiding, not intentionally, but aiding the demise of a teammate and people that were loved down there in Georgia. So we'll have to see how all of that plays out. That's going to be a really interesting kind of little side note to all of this. Something else to take into consideration, something that I really like to look at, is I really try to just keep a small bead on who's visiting with what team. Now, we don't always know for sure, but a lot of times these players are asked while they're at the combine, who'd you talk with, who'd you meet with, how'd your meeting go? And there's even websites that will track what teams have met with which player. And so if you're trying to kind of get ahead of things and you're trying to, especially if your draft your rookie draft is before the NFL draft, which I know quite a few people that do that. I do that in some occasions. If you're one of those people, keep an eye on those lists because it will get you, it will help increase your odds of hitting on good players in good situations and in the right range that you would want. A good example, one guy that was really tough to peg down last year was Treylon Burks because he literally was interviewed by almost every team, which told me nobody has any idea where this guy's going in the draft. Before we had talked about him being a top 10 guy, then there were rumors that he might not even be a first round pick and, everything in between. And I just really think that people didn't know what was going to happen with him, where he was going to end up, where he was going to land. And so each and every team was interviewing just in case he was on the board when they picked because they might be interested in him. Then you see other teams where, why has this team interviewed 10 different running backs? This tells me that I need to get so-and-so running back off my team because this team is absolutely drafting a running back, and based on the caliber of players they're talking to, it's going to be on day 2. So these are the different things that I think are a nice little boost by really tracking where these players are visiting, who they're talking to, all of that kind of stuff. Michael Anthony, the list for AR-15 is very interesting. Yes, we talked quite a bit about him early on, what the potential landing spots. I mean, I had mentioned before that I loved Seattle as a landing spot, but I was referencing pick 20. I think now Tristan just said it, and he's probably right. There's a very good chance that he is a top 5 draft pick. In fact, I would say that's probably the odds-on favorite to be a top 5 pick. And shoot, he could go number 1 overall. I don't think he will. I think he's still going to go behind those top 3 quarterbacks. But all it takes is one team. Not everybody has to love him. Not everybody has to think he's great. But all it takes is one team believing in him and believing that he's the guy. And then all of a sudden, well, shoot, Houston didn't take Bryce Young. They took Anthony Richardson, or the Colts take Anthony Richardson. I mean, he is, his ceiling is bonkers. Bonkers. I've mentioned it on here before, but in the games that I've watched, I've seen him make plays where my jaw drops. I mean, literally like open mouth, like mouth breather type level of like, whoa, that was an incredible play. And then the very next play, you're like, well, what was that? That was 2 yards behind the guy, and he was 5 yards away in the end zone. Like, how does that happen? The ceiling is bonkers for this guy. B. Cole asking, is he the number 1 rookie quarterback if drafted top 5? I think there's a good argument for that. I do. I think there's a good argument to be made that he would be the number 1 guy because the other 3 all have mobility to some level. Stroud didn't show a lot of it in college, but I think he's a slightly better athlete than he gets credit for. Bryce Young, maybe the opposite, but we've seen him run a little bit. Will Levis has the most rushing upside of those 3 guys, but none of them I would call running quarterbacks. None of them are on the level of Hurts and Lamar and Fields and those kind of guys. Anthony Richardson absolutely is. I think the biggest question is going to be, what team does he go to? And is that team looking for him to start right away? Because it's really hard to pick Anthony Richardson. Let's say he goes 5. And the Seahawks are really committed to having Geno Smith play this year. Well, if that's the case, it's tough to take him number 1 overall because now he's sitting for an entire year. And you're not going to really know how it's all going to play out. I mean, it's kind of like Trey Lance. You're hoping this works out, but he's a big risk, and you're not going to find out for a while. I would probably still take Bryce Young there. But let's say he gets lucky And this sounds the opposite of what I mean, but if he falls to 7 to the Arizona or to the Atlanta Falcons, or maybe that's 8, whatever it is, like I would love him there. Or if he goes at 4 to the Colts, like I would love him there. I think he could feast with some of those teams. So it's going to be interesting. I think it's going to be team. I think it's going to be situation, are all going to dictate it. But is there a very good argument to be made with his talent, his ability, his upside, that he could absolutely be the number 1 quarterback off the board and even rivaling Bijan Robinson in Superflex leagues? I think that is absolutely in the realm of possibility. I've also spent quite a bit of time looking at the draft boards and just analyzing what picks teams have, because we talk about at times, this team is definitely going to take X player. A lot of times for our case, we're talking like running back. This team's definitely taking a running back, But sometimes you got to kind of pay attention to what situation these teams are in and what picks do they have where a running back that would come in would actually hurt. So, or receiver. So I think the Bears are a really good case with wide receiver. Everybody's talking about the Bears taking a wide receiver, and they very well could. But I still think Mooney is going to be their top receiver this year. Reason being, they have the number 1 pick overall. If they trade down, I don't see them trading any lower than like pick 5. So they're going to still have a top 5 pick. They're going to probably be taking an elite defensive asset. They're not going to be taking a quarterback there. So then their next pick is not at 2-1. Remember, that was the Chase Claypool trade. So they don't have that pick anymore. Now, they did make a different pick draft, or they do have a different pick because of a trade that they made for Patrick Queen. But that pick is at pick 54, not pick 32. So if that's the case, what receivers are really going to be left by that point? I would expect the Zay Flowers, the Josh Downs, the guys like that are probably all going to be gone. Maybe you would have a Kayshon Boutte, best case scenario. But even there, like none of these guys are big physical receivers. A lot of these guys that are going to be in this range are small, quick, shifty guys, which is Mooney. It is who he is. So I have a hard time believing that they would use that type of draft capital on the same type of guy. And even if they do, Mooney's got a leg up on him. So that's why I believe Mooney is one of the best late round picks that you can get right now, because I still think he's going to be their top receiver this year. Another situation that I think is worth monitoring. I keep hearing that Denver is going to be taking a running back. And look, I do think Denver is going to address the running back position. I truly do. But I think it's more likely going to be a veteran in free agency like a Leonard Fournette who is just cut. But even after that, people are talking about how worried they are that, Leonard or Javonte Williams, Broncos don't have a pick till the 3rd round. They don't have any picks where one of those guys are truly going to be a threat to Javonte Williams, who was the 2nd or 3rd pick in the 2nd round 2 years ago. I don't think that's going to be the case. And even if they did use pick 68 or 69 on a running back, or I think there's other positions they're going to fill. I really do. But even if they did, I still think that he's going to be able to be a better guy that outperforms. So that's why I'm still drafting Javonte Williams. Do I think he's going to play week 1? I really probably don't. There's an outside chance, sure, but I'm not banking on that. I'm hoping to see him by midseason and being able to put him in my lineup by midseason. So that's another thing with all of this, is keeping an eye on the draft capital that teams have. What players do they have? What needs do they have? But do they actually have the draft capital to be able to do something about it? And then you have teams like the Raiders that are really interesting this year. The Raiders just have their normal picks all the way through the 4th round into the 5th round. But then they have a ridiculous amount of late round picks. They have 3 5ths, 2 6ths, and 2 7ths. So they have 7 picks in the last 3 rounds. Tons of picks there late. Now, all of that being said is when you are looking at where depth pieces are going to go, you want to look at teams that have multiple picks that are going to be willing to take a chance on those guys to build up some depth. So we could see a couple wide receivers or a tight end that we like late that's a sleeper end up on one of these teams just because of all of the extra draft capital that they do possess. One team I really want to watch for, they don't have their first pick, but they do have San Francisco's first round pick. But I'm really curious to see what the New Orleans Saints are going to do. This is a team that is in really bad shape as far as the cap goes. And they keep figuring a way to kind of kick it down the road, kick it down the road, kick it down the road. But they also haven't had very good teams the past few years. They don't have Sean Payton anymore. They don't have Drew Brees anymore. Alvin Kamara is potentially in some legal trouble. Will they consider maybe not the first round at pick 30, but the second round, pick 41, third round, pick 72? Would they look at a running back there? What about wide receiver? Is Michael Thomas still going to be on this team? It doesn't look like it. So right now you have Olave, who obviously they traded a ton to get. Fantastic player, had an awesome rookie season. But then after him, you have Shaheed. Like, it's not really a lot there. So could this be another team that could take a wide receiver on day 2? Potentially. They could even be taking a quarterback on day 2. Hendon Hooker would be a great fit for this New Orleans Saints team. Mature quarterback could come right away and play. A team that desperately needs a quarterback. But heck, they could take a tight end too. The Saints are one of the few teams that we could see one or all 4 of the fantasy relevant positions be taken by significant players from rookie drafts. So I find their draft to be absolutely fascinating. We'll see if they figure out a way to get more picks early on there, but I think they have one of the more interesting drafts. Just Josh says the Raiders will draft Jalen Carter, and I'm a Raiders fan. We will have to see what they end up deciding to do there. Will be really, really interesting. One other team that I just want to touch on real quick before we get going to break and get Dennis Bennett on here. I'm really curious what the Washington Commanders are going to do, because they're another team that has of potential holes on the offensive side that they could fill with guys in this rookie class. Now, obviously, the receiver is not one of them. They have a very good receiving core led by Jahan Dotson and Terry McLaurin. But, and as Peter just said, Sam Howell. I like Sam Howell. I have him on quite a few teams. I thought he was the best quarterback coming into the year last year. And after the draft, I bumped him down a spot or 2. But I still really like Sam Howell. And I think he showed a little bit in the preseason, showed a little bit during the game that he played, specifically the game against the Cowboys. Running back. They drafted Brian Robinson last year. Brian Robinson, good back, but I don't know that he showed anything exciting or special. Gibson hasn't shown a lot. But then the tight end position is another position that they could use. So they're another team that just keep an eye on if a quarterback were to fall. And I'm not saying fall all the way to 16. But if just they were to fall, would the Commanders be willing to maybe move up and get that guy? Or could they be a spot at 16 for Dalton Kincaid or a spot for Michael Mayer? Maybe. It's definitely a possibility. So lots of interesting things as we watch the combine, as we watch what we like to call the underwear Olympics, as we watch these guys perform. These are all just little things that I like to keep in my head. This is all part of the process when I'm evaluating players, when I'm evaluating talent, and when I'm starting to try to project where they're going to go. These are kind of all the things that I like to keep in mind and keep an open mind about coming into all of this. So I hope that was helpful. That was something that I just kind of wanted to cover really quick and discuss because like I said, I find that really, really valuable. Oh, I did have one more team. Sorry. Let me grab them here. The Buffalo Bills. So the Buffalo Bills are another team that we could see multiple fantasy assets go to. And this would be obviously a great landing spot. But we've been talking for several years now, and we thought maybe Gabe Davis might be the guy. Didn't have a great season. I love my boy Khalil Shakir. Would love to see him continue to get more involved like he was in the playoffs. But this is a team that could use a wide receiver potentially, could be willing to draft one as high as pick 28. This could also be a team that would be willing to draft a running back. We saw in the playoffs last year that they desperately need a true between the tackles grinder, and they do not have that guy. That's something that they need. Could we see a Zach Charbonnet go there in the second round? Could we see them get ballsy and take Bijan in the first? I've not seen him mocked there very often, but I think he would be a great fit. I think that they will go after one of those guys. I think they'll go after a Tank Bigsby, Zach Evans, Kendry Miller, one of these running backs that is truly a between the tackles grinder when they're up in games that they can lean on to help lead them to victory. I would be shocked if we don't see them draft a running back somewhere in the first 3 rounds. I really do believe that they will draft one. And look, I get it. People are like, they just drafted James Cook last year. They did. You're absolutely right. And as good as James Cook is, and I think he'll be a valuable part of this offense, that's not what they need. It's not what they've needed for a while. Zach Moss was not what they needed. Devin Singletary was not what they needed. He did as best he could. They need a true between the tackles grinder for those late in games. And it would also be nice to take a little bit more pressure off Josh Allen, especially near the goal line. That guy takes a ton of hits. Really don't want your franchise player getting hit, getting smashed, getting banged up that often. All right. We are going to go to break here. Before we do, I want to remind you guys again, Bettor Baseball Preview. We are getting you ready for the upcoming baseball season with the Bettor Baseball Preview from fantasy baseball, MLB betting, and the newest baseball cards from 2023. You can access our exclusive content for free right now at bettorsports.com, featuring some of the best minds in the industry like Adam Ronis, Ray Flowers, Kyle Elfrink, and Cody Decker. Get player profiles, prop bets, futures, sleepers, and busts, fantasy draft strategy, collectibles, and more at no additional cost. Please register with your name and email at bettorsports.com right now and get instant access plus notifications when new features are released. Go to bettorsports.com and sign up for the Bettor Baseball Preview today. That's right. Go ahead and do that. We're going to take a break. When we come back, Dennis Bennett on the Bettor Sports Network.
Moose and Keith, weekdays at 10 a.m. Eastern on Bettor Sports Network.
Calvin Ridley yesterday, he applied for reinstatement from the National Football League.
Ridley, Kirk, Zay Jones, Travis Etienne, Trevor Lawrence. That is crazy potent on offense.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. I mean, Ridley's great.
I think Trevor Lawrence is a guy I want in fantasy this year.
I think you're probably right. I think they're just going to get better and better. First off, Peterson's a wonderful offensive mind, a great head coach, and we've seen that and saw that this year as Jacksonville made it to the postseason. And Trevor Lawrence, anybody that questioned whether or not he could play in the National Football League or just how good he was going to be in the NFL, those questions were answered this past season as in the second half of the year. Statistically speaking, he was a top 3 quarterback in the NFL. That's how good Trevor Lawrence is. You throw Calvin Ridley into the mix, he's going to be great. Yeah, I think Lawrence is a guy you want. I think Ridley's a guy you want. Clearly, Travis Etienne is going to be one of those early, first-round selections as well, being the dual-threat running back that he is, not only running, but also catching the ball out of the backfield, Keith, and the ability to take something small and take it to the house. Take a 5-yard dump pass, make a guy miss in the open field, and he's gone. I mean, you saw that with Travis Etienne this past season for Jacksonville. Yeah, sky's the limit. I mean, I think you're going to go from a team in the year span where you wanted no part of the Jacksonville Jaguars when you're looking at fantasy football to where you want as many Jaguars as you possibly can because they're going to be really, really productive. And let's see if they get their tight end back as well, who had
Evan Ingram was great.
And Evan Ingram, who was great this past season.
Yeah. I mean, if they keep that whole core together, their offense is going to be one of the best in football. Like, I legitimately think that they could be one of the best offenses in football.
Zay Jones, Evan Ingram, Christian Kirk, then you throw
Ridley,
Travis Etienne, Trevor Lawrence, a good offensive line, and you've got Doug Peterson being creative calling.
Right?
And you look at that division. The Colts are a mess.
Yep.
Titans
look like they're on the downslide.
Titans are on the downslide, right? That window is clearly closed. And then you got the Houston Texans.
Years away from relevancy.
Yeah.
I mean, Jacksonville could win 11 games next year.
Moose and Keith. Weekdays at 10 a.m. Eastern on Bettor Sports Network.
Welcome back in. Dynasty Nerds, Bettor Sports Network. Dennis Bennett in the house. Dennis, how you doing, buddy?
Man, I am so ready for the weekend. Big games this weekend. 12-year-old basketball finals tournament. So we're waiting. The boy's been putting in time. He had his best shooting session of the year at practice yesterday.
Okay.
So we got him a membership at this place called Just Hoops, not a sponsor yet. And he's been going. So he's not great. He shoots about 25% is what he's shooting. And they got this thing called the gun, and it's this big old net, catches the ball, shoots it back to you, passes it back to you, you can shoot. Yesterday, shot 35%. He took 200 shots in 30 minutes. Shot 35%, made a couple threes even. And the team, they had a game last Saturday, last undefeated team in the league. Half the students on the team were talking shit to him on Friday in school about how they're going to kick his butt and everything. We won 27-11. The guy guarding Cole got so frustrated that he got himself ejected from the game. Technical foul called. So they're going to be seeking revenge this weekend if they get to play us again. They're going to be on the hunt. So our team's pretty primed and they're ready to fight. It should be if they make it to the finals, they're going to play 3 games on Saturday. So this should be it's going to be a heck of a day.
That's a lot. Yeah, I remember doing AAU basketball tournaments growing up, and that sounds familiar because we would do 3, 4, 5 games in a Saturday, and it would just be all day, and it's brutal. It's a blast. As a player, it's a blast,
right.
But you're exhausted by the end of the day. You're just zonked. And my poor parents just having to sit in really uncomfortable bleachers all day, and brutal, but I loved it.
Well, I'm looking forward. I mean, I wanted to pull it out, man, because my wife played college basketball.
I remember you saying that, yeah.
Cole hadn't played since before the pandemic. And when he decided to play this year, we were both like, oh, we don't know how this is going to go. He's not he's got cankles. And so we're like, and he got out there in the first practice and we were both like, all right, he's been playing at school. It's coming together. And he's really improved over the course of the season. He's worked on a lot of different parts of his game. And he's big. He's about 6 to 8 inches taller than every other kid in the league.
Love it.
And at 12 years old, he's 5'8".
Oh, nice.
And so it's like, okay, well, maybe he loves baseball. He's a catcher, first baseman. So baseball and basketball are his games. So we'll see how it goes.
At that size, we got to get this kid in football, man.
He don't mind watching it. I feel like once he gets in next year, 7th grade, we got a 7th grade team at our school. I believe the coaches are going to be like, hey, buddy, what you doing?
We need a left tackle, man.
That's right. I keep telling him, man, that Taylor Decker money, that Joe Thomas money, that's going to help Daddy and Mommy retire in style.
That's no joke. That money is no joke. I love it. Awesome, man. Well, Dennis, we are in the midst of the NFL Combine.
Yep.
And during the Combine, we are evaluating all of these guys 40 times and their bench press reps and all of this different stuff. We just recently also had an update to the Dynasty Nerds ADP. And granted, come Sunday, this will probably look very different. But if we can capitalize now, let's talk through this a little bit. And I want to focus more so on the Superflex tight end premium, more so than the 1QB, because I know there are still a decent amount of 1QB leagues out there, but it seems like a lot of people are converting, or, I've gotten a lot of people that are saying, hey, in 2024, we're switching to Superflex, or, things like that. So there are a lot of leagues converting. So let's focus on that for the time being. Starts off with Bijan Robinson 1-1. No surprise. I think he's been the 1-1 for, it feels like 3 years. Like, it feels like he's been the 1-1 forever in this class. After that, we have Bryce Young and CJ Stroud. Once again, no surprise. I think where things start getting shaken up a little bit is around pick 4. Who do we have at pick 4 here, Dennis?
So in both the ADP from the Dynasty Nerds mock draft app and in our rankings, Jahmyr Gibbs is sitting there at 4. But I have a quick question for you.
Okay.
So how slow does Bijan Robinson have to run, and how unathletic does he have to look in the drills for you to take a quarterback over him? Like if he ran a 4.62, like if he's in the 4.5s, are you like, that's plenty good enough?
Yeah, 4.5s is fine for me. I think you would have to run slower than a 4.65. If he ran slower than a 4.65, I would start to scratch my head a little bit. And
it's almost like if he did that, would it be like, all right, he's not taking the combine seriously because he knows like where he stands? Because you look at the tape and you're like, yeah, that's not a 4.68 guy.
Right. So even like, because we saw Josh Jacobs in the 4.6s.
Yeah.
And,
like,
obviously
he ran a 4.62, if I remember.
Something like that. And, I remember people freaking out about him running in the 4.6s. And, you watch on tape, he's plenty fast enough. He's just fine out there. And in fact, he was NFL's leading rusher this past year. So he's just fine out there. So 4.6, it wouldn't be a deal breaker. I think past that 4.65 mark would really make me wonder. But I don't see it happening. I don't
me either. I think he's going to be just fine. I don't know if he's going to achieve Jonathan Taylor levels, but
no,
I think the whole package is there.
Yeah, I think we're going to see somewhere between a 4.48 and a 4.52 from him. I think we're going to see somewhere right around that range, which I think is slower than some people think.
Where'd you put your money at on that?
Ooh, that's a good question. What is his over? See, that's something I've been disappointed in. I know that there have been a couple places that have done some of these over-unders for the 40 times. I haven't seen a lot of the major ones doing it though. DraftKings and FanDuel and those ones. Have you seen it anywhere?
I haven't seen. I've seen like some glimpses on Twitter of it, but I keep trying to pretend I'm working while I'm at my work, and so I haven't dove too deeply into it. And so it's tonight we have 4-H and basketball practice, so I'm just happy to be here.
Yeah, I get you. I don't blame you. It was my daughter's birthday tonight. So even Sean, like an hour before the show, like, hey, everything's good for tonight, right? I was like, yeah, we're good. Just, it's life. It's life.
Oh, Pete says 4.47 on Prize Picks for Bijan.
See, I wish I could get Prize Picks in Ohio. We can't get Prize Picks in Ohio. That was one of the few places I saw it. 4.47 is a good over-under. I think I would take, I don't know what you would call it. I guess the over? Yeah. I don't know. Slower. I would take slower.
But I wouldn't be surprised if he ran a 4.43 or 4.42.
Sure. I think it's definitely in the realm of possibility, but watching his tape, he's fast, but he's not like burning guys.
Right.
So I think I would
Probably
take
take the
an
over
unpopular.
on that.
Yeah. Yeah. If over is slower. I'm not sure which would that be
That's
over.
what that's how I read it.
Okay. All right. Whatever that is. All right. Peter is saying that you have a trade offer sitting in your
Yeah,
inbox right now.
I'm looking at it.
All right. What's the trade offer?
2-4, 2-10, and a 24-second for Rashad Bateman in a standard league.
Interesting.
Superflex.
That's an interesting trade offer. I guess it comes down to how much do you believe that this new offense can be different than the old offense, and can Bateman stay healthy? Because we saw glimpses early in the season where Bateman looked awesome, and then he got hurt again, and the offense was kind of pedestrian again. So, which way are you leaning on this?
See, I thought it was me that had Bateman, but I'm not seeing him on my team here. Because I don't think I have that many picks. Hold on.
He's like, I don't have any of these assets.
Oh, yeah, no. All right. So I thought I had Bateman, must have been another team. So I've got the picks, but I don't have a first round pick. So I've got 3 seconds, 2-4, 2-10, 2-12. So if I want to rebuild, I finished 4th in the league. I lost to just Josh in the consolation bracket.
Okay.
In a standard league on a low volume offense, that doesn't get it done for me. I think Bateman has the chance to become the guy there, but I don't know what the guy there means with Mark Andrews and the way that J.K. Dobbins looked. And is Lamar back? Is Lamar not back? So I'm not. I don't want to. I'm not going 3 draft picks for Rashad Bateman. 3 seconds.
Yeah. I don't blame you there. I'm not sure I would do it either.
And I don't have a ton of depth at wide receiver. Like my top 3 are Justin Jefferson, great. Deontay Johnson, not too bad. And then Paris Campbell, who's a free agent. Then we've got the likes Brandon Cooks, Richie James, Allen Robinson, Michael Thomas.
Yeah.
It's not pretty.
I get you, man. I get you. All right. Well, let's get back onto this ADP. So we have Jahmyr Gibbs here at pick 4. It surprises me a little bit. I really thought we would have had Will Levis there. And if not, we would have had him at least at 5. But we don't have Will Levis until what would he be? It's not ordered necessarily. So now I gotta count.
His
7,
his
8.
ADP rank is 7.8, and so he's QB3. And we have him ranked in the rankings at number 8.
Okay.
In the dynasty. So right now he's right at where his ADP is right at ranking right now.
Interesting. Because when I would look at it, I would have always assumed that he was closer to those top 2 quarterbacks than it shows here. I would have thought he was going to pick somewhere between 4 and 6. So to see him falling all the way to 8 is a little surprising. Would you snatch him up before that ADP, or is that about where you feel comfortable taking him to?
I'm probably not. I'm not bought into Levis. I think I would take Anthony Richardson over Levis right now because he's going to give me more potential upside. May take him longer to take over the starting job, but I feel like Levis to me just as he's got a lower ceiling than Richardson, and some of the same issues with inconsistent accuracy and things like that. And so if I'm looking at the two of them, I'm going to take the guy with the much higher ceiling. Now I think it looks like we've had, about 300 or 350 drafts conducted so far in the app. So as we start to heat up here and Combine comes this weekend, it wouldn't surprise me to see Levis rise, because Richardson, he's one that's his ADP versus where we have him ranked is kind of off. We have Richardson is actually ranked at 16 overall with an ADP of 10 overall. So that
Okay, so our
he's
rankings
got
are
one
low
of
on
the
him.
biggest gaps between his ADP and his actual ranking. So I think that our rankings just need to get caught up with the ADP here.
Yeah.
The buzz is really what in the last 10 days about Richardson really started to pick up. And then today you're hearing, hey, Richardson is just crushing the interviews. He's killing it here. He's going to throw. And if he throws well and he tests well, I think he's going to skyrocket to the point where if him and Levis do really, really good here, it wouldn't surprise me to see it go Bijan and then 4 quarterbacks.
Yeah, I could absolutely see that as well. So the guys we kind of skipped over there was the trio of wide receivers, and Jackson Smith and Jigba right now has a clear edge on them ADP wise, looking at an average of about 5th pick overall, 5.3, whereas Jordan Addison, Quentin Johnston 7.3, Jordan Addison 7.8. So they're looking more 6th, 7th, a little distant from Jackson Smith and Jigba. That's pretty safely at 5. Is that the order that you have them personally right now, Dennis, or would you flip that?
Addison is moving towards the wide receiver 1 for me. I think when you look over the course of their college careers, Addison has been probably the most consistent. I think if Smith and Jigba had stayed healthy all year this year, now I don't think he needed to put up 1,800 yards receiving like he did last year. He just needed to just play. If he had played every game and been productive and put up 1,200 yards, then we would have all said, well, 2 first-round picks are gone from the team. Of course his numbers are going to come down. There's a reason Julian Fleming is a 5th or 6th year guy at Ohio State, and Emeka Ibuka wasn't starting either. So while there's good guys there, this season it was clearly Jackson Smith and Jigba was the top dog there. So if he had stayed healthy, I think he would have established a little more of the consistency. What scares people now is that he only did it 1 year. And, we've been burned in Dynasty and in the NFL by a lot of 1-year wonders in college. Now, the plus side is he wasn't old when he did it. He had a young breakout age. So that bodes well for him. And he gets, I think, pigeonholed as a slot receiver. And I think the only way he's going to shake that is if he can run in the low 4.4s, because he's got okay size, 6 foot, 195 pounds or so, 200 pounds, somewhere in that range. So if he measures at 6 foot and 200 pounds, I think he's plenty big enough to play outside, and he's a route technician.
For sure.
It'll just come down to, if he runs a 4.59, then I don't think he gets out of the slot. Now, does that mean he's not productive? Oh no, that means he could literally be the next Keenan Allen.
Sure.
I mean, like they could pick him and he could replace Keenan Allen like tomorrow, and the Chargers wouldn't lose a beat kind of approach. I don't think he runs a 4.7 like Keenan did at his combine, but I think it kind of becomes the flavor of the week. What do you like? You got Jordan Addison, really, really light, Devonta Smith kind of frame, but productive pretty much all of his years in college. Quentin Johnston, really dynamic, but not always consistent, can disappear in games. He's quote unquote team big wide receiver. So he's kind of my favorite because of that. And then Smith and Jigba, who's kind of in between the two of them in play style as well as size. So if I'm picking at the 1, 5, 6, 7, I feel like I'm going to have equal shares of all of them. So if I've got 10 teams, 10 picks in that range, I'll get overweight and I'll be like, oh, well, I've got, it's time to move on from JSN. I've got plenty, unless something happens along the way between now and our rookie drafts, perfect landing spot, veteran gets cut, opening up the door to productive asset or productive opportunity.
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. All right. So then we mentioned Anthony Richardson and Will Levis. They're at 8 and 10 respectively. Then we've got basically a group of running backs. So at pick 9, we've got Zach Evans, 11, Zach Charbonnet, 12, Sean Tucker, and 13, Tank Bigsby. I have one running back in there that I don't think belongs with the rest of those guys at all. And for me, that's Sean Tucker. I watching his film, I wanted to like him so bad. I really did. In our too early mock draft, I drafted him as the 3rd running back off the board. But after watching his tape, he'll be lucky to make my top 10. Like I'm out. But how do you feel about these guys? And does this feel like the right range for all of them for you?
I feel like Tucker has fallen, and I haven't watched a lot of his film, but a little bit of what I'm seeing is that he doesn't have a ton of wiggle to him. And so then if he doesn't have a lot of speed, he's going to be sort of a jag. Now, I want to watch him run. I want to see maybe he's agile, and maybe it's just he doesn't have great vision. And, he ends up being another Cam Akers because, the holes are there. He just doesn't see them. And he's big enough at 209 pounds or so that he can get some stuff done running up the back of his lineman, but he ends up not being very efficient. I like Charbonnet, big guy, can catch the ball. If he can develop in all 3 phases of the running game, he's a guy that could really be someone that steps up, becomes an RB1 and kind of takes over and has a 3-year run for some team that's running back needy. Bigsby, again, he's another one of these guys that I'm still questioning. Does he have the vision, the wiggle kind of to be a 3-down back? He's got good size. He runs with a lot of power. And I like him, but I think if I were putting these guys, it would probably be, I'd have Charbonnet at 3. Of these 4, it'd be Charbonnet, Evans, Bigsby, and Tucker in that order. But I feel like Tucker's going to drop off even some. Even me being a sizist like I am probably going to have like Tyjae Spears and Devin A-Chain even up over him at this point.
I agree. And list, I would probably have the same, except I would flip Bigsby and Evans. I like Bigsby a little more than I like Evans, but I think I would have that same order otherwise. And you're right. Tyjae Spears, this is, I think, we're seeing some of the early mocks versus some of the more recent mocks kind of come into play here, because early on, I don't know that we would have seen Tyjae Spears here at pick average ADP is around 22. I feel like we would have seen him closer to 30. But recently, he's been a fringe first rounder. So, I think he's kind of gotten caught in the middle here a little bit from the older mocks that were happening in January to some of the more recent mocks. A couple other ones that stuck out a little bit to me. Actually, the very next one right after Tank Bigsby, Kayshon Boutte. There have been enough grumblings and rumblings about his off the field. If you want to look up what it is, you're more than welcome to. I don't want to like spread things that are not confirmed or for sure on here at all. But he's been a hot button player as far as talent is there, but consistency's not. Upside there, but is there off the
things?
Where do you feel? What are you doing with Boutte? Is all the way up here at pick 14 too high, too low, just right?
So I think what is propelling him some is some highlight reel games from a year ago, not necessarily last year. He had an off year. And then he's bigger than Flowers. He's bigger than Downs at 6 foot, 195. He's got a little more size on him. And I think sometimes, guys like me who are sizist are going to start to pigeonhole the Flowers and the Downs as well. They're going to be just slot guys, and they can't do it on the outside when some of them can. Antonio Brown was 5'10", 185 pounds, and he had no issues playing on the outside.
Right.
So just because somebody's small, we don't want to automatically write them off as only being able to play in the slot. Now, the odds are that that's probably going to be true for most of the people in that size, but that doesn't mean they won't be productive. So with Boutte, I think he provides the perception that he can play outside, be on the field for all 3 downs. And I know teams tend to start a lot of 3 wides anymore. But if they're only running 2, I think some of the perception is that Boutte will be out there versus a Downs or a Flowers who is going to get stuck in the slot. But the inconsistency is really troubling because now they didn't have great quarterback play at LSU last year.
Right.
And that's something that sometimes can be hard to separate. And if you look, sometimes it's like, was the effort there, even though the quarterback play was? And if you start to see lack of effort, that leaves a sour taste in your mouth. I think he's a good player. And, I just don't want to, if I'm drafting a fantasy wide receiver at the middle to end of the first round, my hope is that they're going to be on my team for 6, 7, 8 years. I'm not looking to draft a front runner Lenny at the wide receiver position and kind of well, all right, the team sucks, so now he's checking out and making vacation plans, and he's got a hangnail, he's got to go on IR.
Yeah, no, I hear you on that. So what's one player, we've got a long list here, and I don't want to spend the whole time going player by player necessarily, but give me a player or 2 that you feel like is going to be significantly higher of the ones that we haven't covered, that will be significantly higher post combine.
So post combine, like we've got a couple guys that our rankings have pretty low. Like Roshan Johnson is still at 39th overall, with an ADP of 33.6. I feel like he is going to rise to the early second round.
Yeah.
So
I
that
could absolutely see that too. That was one
as
of
the
mine.
mock drafts keep going, he's going to come way up. Another guy with a huge discrepancy is Luke Musgrave, the tight end. He's going off the board at 54, or he's ranked 54 overall and going off the board at 43. So in the 4th round, I think he's going to move probably up into the 3rd round. I heard you saying earlier when you were talking to Tristan that Daniel Jeremiah says that he thinks, as many as 9 tight ends could go in the top 3 rounds. Well, Musgrave is about tight end 4 or 5 here. And then if he goes, we've seen Bellinger and Otten, Jelani Woods and Isaiah Likely all came in and produced. Now, they didn't all get a full season of opportunity, but even heck, Trey McBride in Arizona after Ertz went out, he was productive. And so I think as we start to look at it, we're going to, we did it with wide receivers after OBJ. There was a stretch where we used to be, well, it takes 2 to 3 years for the wide receiver to develop. And then we had a couple come in, go nuts right from the get-go. And then we started looking, we're chasing that wide receiver that's going to go off right from day one. And now we've had some tight ends come in and play really well. And now we're like, hey, who's the tight end that's going to come in and do that? And we're starting to chase that tight end. So I think we got to maybe temper our expectations, but these guys are going to rise from where they're at. I think, guys like Eric Gray, who's in the 3rd round, somebody that I could see going, mid to late 2nd round. I like what I see of Mo Ibrahim. My concern is that he measured 5'7.5". Yeah. And I know how much, we, i.e. Rich, love Jarrett Patterson. I just don't know that when, it takes a lot to be consistently useful when you're just that undersized. Now he's kind of he's thick bowling ball of a guy like Devin Singletary or Darrell Henderson were over 200 pounds. So it'll be interesting to kind of see what he actually measures in and weighs in at. But probably the like under the radar kind of guy that is getting a little buzz here and there that I want to do a lot more work on is Dwayne McBride. Can he play all 3 downs? Is he just going to be a 2-down guy? Yeah. It seems like he's got a little bit of wiggle to him, but he's got good size. Is he going to be able to move up and do what? Will he measure well? Will he run well? Can he show agility? And can he handle, blocking linebackers that are blitzing?
Yeah, no, all really, really good questions on there. And Roshan Johnson was the biggest one for me that I looked on here, and I was like, I feel like he's going to move up. Israel, and I'm not going to get it quite right, but I believe it's Abanaconda.
Close enough.
Close enough. All right. From Pitt, he's another size speed freak that I think he's going to probably run a decent 40 time, and he's going to move up just from that alone. I don't know what kind of draft capital he's going to get, but simply just from the combine buzz of seeing a big guy like that run that fast, I feel like he's going to move up people's board, even if it's only 3 or 4 slots. I think we're going to see him move up a little bit. Conversely, who on here, and it might even be players we already talked about, but who on here is like, that is just too high. Like, I just wouldn't take this guy that high.
I'm struggling even at an ADP of 19.8. I'm not yet buying into Marvin Mims. I see him, and we've been doing mock drafts, and we're getting ready. We've got it all queued up, getting ready to start drafting our new rookie draft 6.0. I'm hoping to have at least one of the first rounds, either super flex or 1 QB, out by next Wednesday. We want to get all the offensive skill players measurements and stuff in, so we can see where we're actually at with those guys. See who buys into the combine hype, who buys into the 40-yard dash hype. There's some of these guys you watch on tape and they look slow, and then they go to the combine and they run fast, and then we buy into them and they go to the NFL and they still look slow.
Right.
It's wild because Michael Mayer, for me, I feel like he's going to drop. In part, the Dalton Kincaid buzz is coming on hard.
Real
now
hard.
They're different types of tight ends.
They are.
Kincaid is the Mark Andrews, and I think Mayer is the Gronk kind of do it all, whereas Kincaid is the receiver.
Right.
He may be a willing blocker, but is he an able blocker? Versus Mayer, who is an able blocker, but not quite as athletic or fast as Kincaid. So we got Mayer. Where's he checking in at 16? I feel like that's fair. I just feel like Kincaid at 22.4 has
that'll rise
to jump over him.
Yeah, that'll rise. Absolutely. I think he's gonna be close, if not. You're right. I mean, there could be a world where he passes Mayer, which seems wild because for a long time we were talking about, Michael Mayer as the guy all the way from his freshman year when he was producing as a true freshman at Notre Dame. We were talking about how talented he was. So to think that, at this point that he could be passed by somebody just shows how good this class is at the tight end position because, last couple of years, other than Kyle Pitts, we'd have loved to have a guy like Michael Mayer. And now we're saying that he might not even end up being the tight end one in the class when it's all said and done. So that's obviously really, really impressive. Let's shift gears a little bit here quickly and kind of touching on a little bit when I was talking about looking at teams, who they're getting visits from, what guys are they bringing? What guys are they talking to? When we see different clues on, what kind of draft capital teams have, who are a couple players that you're like, I want to get them off my roster before free agency, before the NFL draft, because I'm really, really concerned that this team drafts or signs their replacement?
So in Carolina, it's everybody except DJ Moore. So like I've got Chuba Hubbard, I've got Deontay Foreman, who's a free agent. I even have some Terrace Marshall, I've got Tommy Tremble, and I think all of those guys are likely to be replaced this season.
Sure.
And so, those are low dollar guys. You want to get rid of them. I think so. Logan Thomas in Washington, he came off an injury last year and had a little bit of a down year. And, with Eric Bieniemy coming in there, I'm not expecting Bieniemy to go in and just recreate the Kansas City offense in Washington. But they've got a tight end there that kind of can do some of that stuff in Cole Turner.
Mm-hmm.
He's not a block first tight end. He
Right.
was one of the primary targets for Carson Strong in Nevada. Very, very productive. And he's going into his second year. I feel like Logan Thomas is a guy that at 33, 34 years old, coming off a subpar year with an injury. And if Sam Howell is the guy, and I know that there's been backtracking by Ron Rivera saying, well, he's not promised the starter, but he is the QB1 because, frankly, he's the only guy on the roster.
Right.
That kind of, I saw some after Howell was named the QB1. I saw some trades go through. I'm like, oh, people are jumping hard here. But Washington has some weapons, and I think there's an opportunity. They've got a couple guys that can play the blocking tight end role. And then you take Cole Turner, who I think is 6'5" and about 250 pounds with good athletic ability, can catch the ball well. I don't know that he's as agile as Travis Kelce,
Sure.
but he's definitely a receiving tight end. Adam Thielen, 34 years old, fairly high contract, super reliable, great in the end zone. But KJ Osborne kind of started to usurp some of that role.
Mm-hmm.
And even though it's a fairly weak free agent class, it feels like O'Connell's going to want to bring somebody in to kind of move into that second wide receiver role next to Justin Jefferson. I think, the reason I don't think it's going to be Osborne's about 27 years old already. He's been in the league a few years. Now, he broke in late, kind of the same way that Thielen did. And Thielen's 34, and he's had several very good years. So I'm not saying it won't happen. And then lastly, my guy, and it hurts me to say it, I spent all going into last season saying, I believe that Tyler Allgeier's going to get 225 carries. And he was right in that range. He had a great year.
He did.
And I know Atlanta has lots of needs, but he's just a late round, fourth or fifth round running back. It's disposable. They can easily, with the depth of this class, they could bring somebody else in that maybe has a little bit more pop or a little bit more power. And I just feel like getting out of the Tyler Allgeier business, if I'm like on the verge of like I'm a top 2 team, probably going to hold on to him because of the depth that he can provide me. But if he's like my RB1, I'm going to be looking to move him because I know I'm not competing.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good one. And that was one of the guys on my list as well. A couple other names, Joe Mixon. I've been talking about him for a long time. And I remember even on the podcast, Rich and Matt were like, no, the Bengals are a team that they're blah, blah, blah. And we're seeing it trend more to the direction. And even especially when you add in the off the field stuff, I know it got dismissed and all of that, but it really seems like this would be a good time for the Bengals to move on, to get their running back of the future. Joe Mixon's on, the wrong side of 26 now. Even though he was one of the younger backs in his class, I think it's time for them to move on, and they could move on without a terrible cap hit. And so you mentioned Tyler Allgeier. That was another guy that I'm 100% with you on. I'm probably moving him. I know he had a good year, but I'm a little nervous. Another team, and it's once again, it's not because this player played poorly, but I always look for coaching changes. Anytime there's a coaching change, there's always a very real risk of a team moving on from a player and drafting their guy. And I think that could end up being the case with Dameon Pierce. I get it. Dameon Pierce had a good season. I don't think he's a bad player at all. And I don't think he's necessarily going to be completely gone. I don't think that he's going to completely lose his job. But we're talking about a Houston team that has a new head coach, new offensive coordinator. So they're going to want to get their guys in. and it's a team with a lot of draft capital. Anytime you get a team with a lot of draft capital, that's always real dangerous. So pick 34 could potentially be a running back. Pick 66 and pick 67. Those are all day 2 picks that they have. They have 3 day 2 picks after their 2 day 1 picks that we're probably going to see them take a quarterback, maybe a receiver, a star defensive player. So it wouldn't shock me. And I don't want to be left holding the bag on a 4th round running back that's good, but not necessarily an elite player. So I think those are the guys that I'm looking to move on from. Dennis, we just have a couple minutes left. Tell the good folks where they can find you and what you are up to.
Well, I am Tuesday nights. I'm in the Nerd Herd Discord with our illustrious friend here in the chat, Peter Bartowski. We talk trades from 9 to 10 o'clock, Tuesday trade show.
Nice.
We record it so you can go back and listen if you miss it. We Fantasy Football Roundtable, Mondays and Wednesdays, or Mondays and Fridays. Go to your favorite podcast platform, hit that subscribe button, download. You don't have to listen, just download. Give me that number. Give me a rating and a review there. And then we're putting out lots of great content over at dynastynerds.com. You know, you can't beat what we got going on there. Rookie profiles, mock drafts, strategy articles, all kinds of good stuff.
Yeah, no, you do a fantastic job with the writers there, keeping everything organized, keeping everything in line. And there's a lot of writers to keep track of. So you do a really, really fantastic job with that. One thing that I want to just plug again real quick before we get out of here, the Dynasty Nerds film room, like it's such an advantage right now. If you want to get your eyes on these players, especially you're going to see some players names that you're like, who is that guy? You're going to be able to find them in the Dynasty Nerds film room. And if they're not there, they're going to be there within the next week because we're just now figuring out who they are as well. So we'll get them in there as well. And we'll get some tape up there on those players. So make sure that you get over there, get yourself a Nerd Herd membership. And if you want to get the Nerd Herd membership absolutely free, that would include the Nerd Score that Jared and I put together, which we're actually going to be doing a release show for the Nerd Score this year. Never done that before. We're going to do a release show for the Nerd Score, which we're really excited about. But on top of that, if you want to get all of that, the GM tool, all of that absolutely free, all you have to do is sign up for Underdog. That's right. And Underdog is also going to double your deposit using promo code NERD. So up to $100 there over at Underdog. So I'm doing best balls there. Absolutely love it. You can find me on Twitter at Dynasty Price. A lot of content and stuff that I'm pumping out right now. Different mock drafts, talking about players, talking about situations, what these teams are looking to be doing. I'll be talking a lot this weekend with the Combine, some of the results that we get from these players and what it does or doesn't mean for their long-term outlook. So I appreciate you guys. Follow me there on Twitter. You can find me on the Dynasty Nerds podcast. And here every Thursday night on the Bettor Sports Network, Dennis Bennett will be with me, and we'll always have an amazing guest like normal. We'll see you guys next week.